The red alarm lights flashed across the command center as another human colony went silent. Admiral Jack Morrison watched the large screen show the terrible news. Colony 7 had fallen. 3,000 people lived there just yesterday. Now there was nothing but empty space and burning metal. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer rim," said Lieutenant Danny Fox, his young face pale with worry. "The Vorthons hit 4 more settlements this week. They're moving faster than we expected." Jack rubbed his tired eyes. For 3 years, Earth had been fighting a war they couldn't win. The aliens had better ships, stronger weapons, and shields that could stop human attacks. Earth's small fleet of destroyers and cruisers were like toys compared to the massive Vorthon warships. "How many ships do we have left?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer would hurt. 37 destroyers and 12 cruisers, sir. We lost the Brighton and the Montana last week trying to defend Colony 7. Jack stared at the numbers on his screen. 49 ships to protect all of human space. The Vorthons had hundreds, maybe thousands. Each one was bigger and stronger than anything Earth could build, or at least, that's what everyone believed. "Admiral, Morrison to the secure communication room, priority level black," came a voice over the speakers. Jack's heart jumped. Priority level black meant only one thing: Project Blackwater. Jack walked through the gray hallways of Luna Station, passing tired-looking officers who had been fighting an impossible war. None of them knew about the secret that had been hidden in the asteroid belt for 20 years. None of them knew that Earth had been working on something that could change everything. The secure room was small and cold. Jack sat down and pressed, his hand on the scanner. The screen came to life, showing the face of General Pete Mason back on Earth. "Jack, it's time," Pete said. His voice was serious. "The President has given the order. We're activating Project Blackwater." Jack felt his hand shake. "Pete, are you sure? We've never tested it in real combat. Hell, we've barely tested it at all. If this goes wrong..." "If this goes wrong, we're dead anyway," Pete interrupted. "The Vorthons are planning something big. Our spies say they're gathering a massive fleet. They want to hit Earth directly within the month." Jack looked at the reports on his desk. Colony after colony falling. Ship after ship destroyed. Earth was running out of time and options. "The crew doesn't know what they're really guarding out there," Jack said. "Captain Rogers thinks it's just another research station." "Steve Rogers is a good man. He'll understand when the time comes. But Jack, you need to know something else. The other governments are getting nervous. The Chinese and Russians are talking about surrender terms. They think the war is already lost." Jack closed his eyes. 20 years ago, when the first alien ships had appeared in Earth's solar system, everything had changed. The visitors weren't friendly explorers like in the old movies. Some were traders who wanted to do business. Others, like the Vorthons, saw humans as weak creatures who could be easily conquered. Earth had tried to build up its space navy, but human technology was years behind. The best human ships were slow and weak compared to alien vessels. That's when a small group of scientists and military leaders had started Project Blackwater. They had studied captured alien technology, reverse-engineered their weapons, and begun building something that had never existed before. "Jack, are you still there?" Pete's voice brought him back to the present. "I'm here. I'm just thinking about all the people who worked on this project. Dr. Carter has spent half his life on Ceres Station. The construction crews, the engineers, the pilots who will fly those fighters, they all believed in something they'd never seen. And now they're going to see it. Jack, I need you to send the activation codes to Ceres Station. Dr. Carter is waiting." Jack typed in his authorization codes. Somewhere in the asteroid belt, systems that had been sleeping for months would wake up. Reactors that could power a small city would come online. Launch bays that held hundreds of fighters would open for the first time. "It's done," Jack said. "How long until she's ready?" "Carter says 48 hours for full activation, 72 hours until she can move." "And Captain Rogers?" "He'll get his new orders tomorrow morning." "Jack, I know this is hard. We're asking one ship and one crew to do what our entire fleet can't do." Jack thought about Steve Rogers, the captain, of what everyone believed was just a research vessel. Steve was a good officer, calm under pressure and respected by his crew. But tomorrow, he would learn that his ship was actually the largest and most powerful vessel ever built by human hands. Pete, what if the aliens figure out we only have one supercarrier? What if they realize it's all we've got? Then we better make sure they never find out. Jack, this isn't just about winning battles. It's about buying time. Time to build more ships, time to train more crews, time to show the galaxy that humans won't just roll over and die. The communication ended, leaving Jack alone in the small room. Outside, Luna Station continued its daily routine. Officers planned patrol routes for ships that couldn't protect anyone. Engineers worked on weapons that barely scratched alien shields. Pilots trained for battles they probably wouldn't survive. But deep in the asteroid belt, something was waking up. Something that would change how the galaxy saw humanity. Jack just hoped it would be enough. He walked back to the command center, where Lieutenant Fox was still monitoring the alien movements. Sir, we're getting strange readings from the asteroid belt. Some kind of energy surge near Ceres. Jack kept his face calm. Probably just solar activity. Keep monitoring our patrol ships. Yes, sir. Jack looked at the star map showing human space. Small, weak, and getting smaller every day. But in 72 hours, that might change. The aliens had no idea what was coming for them. The war was about to begin for real. Captain Steve Rogers stood on the bridge of what he thought was a simple research ship. The asteroid around them had been his home for 2 years. Every day he watched his crew run tests and experiments that seemed to have no real purpose. They guarded scientists who worked on projects they weren't allowed to discuss. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Captain, we're getting new orders from Earth Command, said Commander Lisa Hayes, his second in command. She handed him a sealed message tube, the kind used only for the most secret information. Steve broke the seal and read the message. His face went white. He read it again, sure there had been some mistake. The words didn't make sense. Lisa, I need you to call all senior officers to the briefing room, right now. Sir, is everything okay? I honestly don't know. 20 minutes later, Steve sat across from his top officers. Commander Hayes, Chief Engineer Ben Carter, Flight Commander Amy Collins, and Security Chief Tom Bradley. These people had served with him for years. They trusted him. Now he had to tell them something that would change everything. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Steve began. Everything we thought we knew about our mission here is wrong. He pressed a button on the table. The lights dimmed and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the asteroid they lived in, but this time it was different. The rock wasn't solid, it was hollow like a giant egg. And inside that egg was something impossible. This is the USS Leviathan, Steve said quietly. We're not on a research station. We're on the largest warship ever built. Amy Collins, who led the small group of pilots on the base, stared at the display. Sir, that's 12 kilometers long. That's bigger than anything in space. Bigger than anything anyone knows about, Steve corrected. The ship has been hidden here for 20 years. We've been living inside it this whole time without knowing. Ben Carter, the chief engineer, studied the technical details flowing across the screen. The power requirements alone, Captain, this thing would need reactors the size of buildings. How is this possible? According to these files, it uses quantum reactors, technology we learned from 3 different alien species. The ship can generate enough power to run a small city. Tom Bradley looked confused. Captain, where are the weapons? Where's the crew? I've walked every corridor on this station. Steve pressed another button. The display changed, showing deck after deck of sealed compartments. Most of the ship has been in sleep mode. The crew, quarters, the fighter bays, the weapon systems, everything has been waiting. We've been living in just the command section. Fighter bays? Amy asked, her voice excited. How many fighters? 500, Steve said, plus 50 heavy bombers, all equipped with technology that doesn't officially exist. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the numbers on the screen. 500 fighters was more than Earth's entire Space Force had. Sir, Lisa said carefully. What are our orders? Steve took a deep breath. We're going to war. The Vorthans are planning a major attack. Earth Command wants us to stop them. Us? Ben asked. Captain, I'm an engineer, not a warrior. Most of our people are scientists and technicians. Not anymore. Steve pressed another button. The display showed thousands of personnel files. 40,000 crew members are being transferred to us. They're already on their way. Pilots, gunners, Marines, engineers, medical staff. Everyone we need to run this ship. Amy looked at the fighter specifications on her screen. Her eyes were wide. Captain, these fighters are incredible. They have adaptive AI systems, energy, shields, quantum engines. They're better than anything the aliens have. The question is, Tom said, can we actually use all this? I mean, we're talking about going from a research station to the most powerful ship in known space overnight. Steve understood their concerns. Just this morning, they had been running routine maintenance on laboratory equipment. Now they were being asked to command a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. I won't lie to you, Steve said. This is going to be the hardest thing any of us have ever done. But look at what's happening out there. Colony after colony is falling. Our people are dying. Earth's regular fleet can't stop the Vorthons. He stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. For 20 years, the best minds on Earth have been building this ship. They used every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on. They designed weapons and systems that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. And they did it all in secret, waiting for the day when humanity would need it most. That day is now, Lisa said quietly. Yes. In 18 hours, the activation sequence will be complete. The asteroid shell will open and the USS Leviathan will emerge. When that happens, we stop being a research crew and become the most important military unit in human history. Ben pulled up the engineering schematics on his tablet. Captain, I've been working with some of these systems for 2 years without knowing what they really were. The metamaterial hull plating, the gravity generators, the manufacturing bays. I thought they were experiments. They were experiments. Now they're weapons of war. Amy studied the fighter designs. Sir, who's going to fly these ships? I have 12 pilots on my team. These files show we need 500. The new crew includes experienced pilots from every major air force on Earth, plus some volunteers who have been training in secret simulators for years. They know these fighters better than anyone. Tom looked at the security protocols. Captain, what about the aliens? What happens when they realize we have this kind of firepower? Steve had been wondering the same thing. According to the briefing files, that's part of the plan. Earth Command wants the galaxy to know that humanity isn't defenseless anymore. The USS Leviathan isn't just a weapon. It's a message. What kind of message? Lisa asked. That humans don't give up. That we adapt. That we find ways to win even when everything looks hopeless. The officers sat in silence, looking at the technical specifications of their new home. Weapons that could crack planets. Shields that could stop anything the aliens threw at them. Manufacturing facilities that could build new fighters in hours instead of months. Sir, Amy said, I have one more question. If this ship is so powerful, why did Earth wait so long to use it? Steve looked at the classified sections of his orders. Because we only have one. If the USS Leviathan is destroyed, we can't build another one for at least 10 years. This ship isn't just our most powerful weapon. It's our only hope. The room went quiet again. Outside their window, the asteroid that had been their home for years was beginning to split apart. Deep inside the rock, massive systems were coming to life for the first time. In a few hours, the galaxy would learn that Earth had been keeping a very big secret. All right, people, Steve said, standing up. Let's wake up a giant. Lieutenant Tom Bradley sat in the cockpit of his new fighter, hands shaking as he looked at all the controls. 3 days ago, he had been flying patrol missions in an old Earth fighter that could barely keep up with alien scouts. Now he was inside, a machine that seemed to come from a science fiction movie. Red Squadron, this is your first live combat exercise, came the voice of Flight Commander Amy Collins over the radio. Remember, these fighters are different from anything you've flown before. The AI will help you, but don't let it do all the thinking. Tom pressed the ignition button. The fighter's engine made no sound, but he could feel the power flowing through the ship. His display screen lit up with information he had never seen before. The fighter's computer was already scanning space around them, looking for threats that didn't exist yet. How are we supposed to fight in these things? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Miller over the radio. She was in the fighter next to Tom's. I feel like I'm flying a computer instead of a ship. That's exactly what you're doing, Amy replied. These fighters learn from every battle. The more you fight, the smarter they get. 200 fighters launched from the USS Leviathan's massive bay doors. Tom had never seen so many human ships in one place. Each fighter was sleek and black, almost invisible against the stars. They moved in patterns that looked random, but felt right somehow. Contact, called out Lieutenant Mike Davis from the front of the formation. We have Vorthon ships approaching. Looks like a full invasion fleet. Tom's heart jumped. On his screen, he could see over 200 alien ships heading toward Proxima Colony. They were arranged in perfect formations, just like always. The Vorthons fought like machines, following the same tactics they had used for centuries. Red Squadron, Blue Squadron, attack formation Alpha, Amy ordered. Remember, they expect us to fly in straight lines and follow predictable patterns. Don't give them what they expect. Tom pushed his fighter forward, following the others toward the alien fleet. His ship's AI was already analyzing the enemy ships, finding weak spots in their shields and weapons. Information flowed across his screen faster than he could read it. The Vorthon commander, Admiral Keth Voran, watched the approaching human fighters from his flagship. He had destroyed dozens of human fleets over the past 3 years. Their ships were slow and weak. Their tactics were simple, and their weapons couldn't penetrate Vorthon shields. Sir, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the human fighters, reported his weapons officer. Impossible, Keth replied. Humans don't have technology we haven't seen before. Prepare to fire. But as the human fighters got closer, something strange happened. Instead of flying in straight lines toward the Vorthon ships, they began moving in ways that made no sense. Some fighters spun in circles while firing, others flew backwards. A few even seemed to be flying upside down. What are they doing? Keth asked, confused. Tom's fighter twisted through space, following movements that his AI suggested. The alien ships were firing at where they thought he would be, but he wasn't there anymore. His fighter's computer had learned that unpredictable movement was better than any armor. This is crazy, Sarah said over the radio as her fighter danced between laser blasts. I feel like I'm flying drunk. That's the point, Amy replied. The aliens can't hit what they can't predict. The battle became chaos. Human fighters swarmed around the Vorthon ships like angry bees. They attacked from every direction at once, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Their weapons cut through alien shields like hot knives through butter. Impossible, Keth whispered as he watched his ships being destroyed one by one. Human weapons can't do this. But they could. The human fighters carried weapons designed from alien technology that had been improved by human engineers. They hit harder and faster than anything the Vorthons had ever faced. Tom found himself behind a large Vorthon cruiser. His fighters' AI showed him exactly where to shoot for maximum damage. He fired once, and the alien ship exploded in a ball of fire. Good shot, Red 7, Amy said. Keep it up. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Vorthon invasion fleet was nothing but floating wreckage. Not a single human fighter had been lost. Tom couldn't believe it. They had just destroyed an entire alien fleet without losing anyone. All fighters return to base, Amy ordered. Mission accomplished. As Tom flew back toward the USS Leviathan, he could see the massive ship clearly for the first time. It was so big it looked like a small moon. Its black hull was covered with weapon systems and fighter bays. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing he had ever seen. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Captain Steve Rogers watched the battle. Reports come in. The victory was complete, but he knew this was just the beginning. Sir, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy, reported Commander Lisa Hayes. Everyone wants to know where the ship came from. Steve smiled. Send a message on all frequencies. Tell them this is Earth Command, and we have 12 more ships just like this one. It was a complete lie. The USS Leviathan was the only supercarrier Earth had. But the aliens didn't know that, and Steve intended to keep it that way. Across the galaxy, alien governments received the message with shock and fear. If humans had 13 ships like the Leviathan, they were now one of the most powerful forces in known space. Species that had ignored Earth for years suddenly wanted to talk. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Diplomats who had never cared about human opinions now wanted to hear what Earth had to say. Trade agreements that had been impossible suddenly became very possible. On Earth, Admiral Jack Morrison watched the news reports with satisfaction. The bluff was working. Humanity had gained more respect in one day than in the previous 50 years of space travel. "Sir," Lieutenant Danny Fox said, "the Chinese and Russian governments are asking about our fleet expansion plans." Jack smiled. "Tell them we're considering their applications to join the program." There was no program, of course, but there would be. The USS Leviathan had bought them time, and time was what humanity needed to build a real fleet. In his fighter bay, Bradley climbed out of his cockpit and looked around at the other pilots. They were all grinning like children. They had just proved that humans could fight and win against anyone in the galaxy. "Think they bought it?" Sarah asked, referring to the message about 12 more ships. Tom laughed. "They better. Because if they figure out we're bluffing, we're all dead." But for now, the bluff was working. The galaxy believed that Earth had become a major power overnight, and maybe, with enough time, that lie would become the truth. Ambassador Kate Williams walked into the Galactic Council building on Nova Station for the first time in her life. 3 months ago, human diplomats weren't even allowed inside. They had to wait in the outer lobby while alien species made decisions about trade routes and territorial disputes. Now everything was different. "Ambassador Williams," said Chancellor Zek of the Andorian Republic, hurrying to meet her at the entrance. "We are honored by your presence. Please, let me escort you to the main chamber." Kate tried to hide her surprise. Chancellor Zek had ignored human messages for years. Now he was treating her like she represented the most powerful nation in the galaxy, which, according to everyone's new calculations, she might actually do. The main council chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives from over 200 worlds. For the first time in history, the human section wasn't empty. Kate took her place at the table marked Earth and looked around at the alien faces staring back at her. "The emergency session will now begin," announced Council President Vera, a tall blue alien with 4 arms. "We are here to discuss the recent events in human space and their implications for galactic security." Kate listened as alien after alien stood up to talk about the Battle of Proxima Colony. They all wanted to know the same thing. How had humanity become so powerful so quickly? The destruction of an entire Vorthon fleet by unknown human technology represents a significant shift in the balance of power, said Senator Nex from the Rigel system. "We demand to know how many of these superweapons Earth possesses." Kate stood up slowly. Every eye in the room was on her. "Earth is committed to peaceful cooperation with all galactic neighbors. However, we also believe in the right to defend ourselves and our colonies." "That doesn't answer the question," Senator Nex pressed. "How many ships like the one that destroyed the Vorthons do you have?" Kate remembered her briefing from Admiral Morrison. The key to making the bluff work was to never give exact numbers. Earth's defensive capabilities are adequate to protect our interests and those of our allies. Murmurs went around the room. The aliens were trying to figure out if that meant 5 ships, 50 ships, or 500 ships. Kate intended to keep them guessing. "Ambassador Williams," said Chancellor Zek, "the Andorian Republic would like to discuss expanding our trade agreements with Earth. We have mining rights in several systems that might interest your people." 3 months ago, the Andorians had canceled their existing trade deal with Earth, saying humans had nothing valuable to offer. Now they wanted to be best friends. "Earth is always interested in mutually beneficial arrangements," Kate replied, carefully. For the next 4 hours, Kate listened to offers she had never dreamed possible. The Centauri Confederation wanted to sell Earth advanced shield technology. The Vegan Trade Union offered exclusive mining rights in their territory. Even the proud Altarians, who had always considered humans primitive, suggested a cultural exchange program. But not everyone was happy about humanity's sudden rise to power. "This is ridiculous," declared General Vex Morden, the surviving Vorthon military commander. One lucky battle doesn't make humans a galactic superpower. We demand proof of these supposed super fleets. Kate stood up again. General, Earth has no obligation to reveal military secrets to potential enemies. However, I can assure this council that humanity is prepared to defend itself against any aggression. That sounds like a threat, General Morden said angrily. It's a promise, Kate replied calmly. The room went quiet. Nobody wanted to test Earth's new capabilities, especially if the humans really did have 12 more ships like the one that had destroyed the Vorthon fleet. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Captain Steve Rogers was dealing with his own problems. The USS Leviathan was undergoing repairs after the battle, and the ship's manufacturing facilities were working overtime to build more fighters and equipment. Captain, we have a problem, said Chief Engineer Ben Carter, looking worried. The quantum reactors are running at 90% capacity just to keep up with production demands. If we have to fight another major battle, we might not have enough power. Steve studied the engineering reports. The Leviathan was an incredible ship, but it was still just one ship trying to do the work of an entire fleet. How long until we can build more fighters? Steve asked. We can produce about 50 fighters per month if we push the manufacturing systems to their limits. But Captain, we're supposed to have 500 fighters. We lost 37 in the last battle and we can't replace them quickly enough. Steve knew the real problem. Everyone thought Earth had 13 supercarriers. In reality, they had one ship that was being pushed beyond its design limits. What about the new construction project? Steve asked. Ben shook his head. Dr. Carter's team on Earth says it will take at least 8 years to build another ship like this one. Maybe 10 years, if we can't get enough rare materials. Steve walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien intelligence services were probably trying to figure out where Earth's other supercarriers were hidden. Spy ships were likely searching every asteroid belt and hidden moon in human space, looking for secret bases that didn't exist. Sir, came the voice of Commander Lisa Hayes over the intercom. We're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Steve returned to the bridge and read Admiral Morrison's latest orders. The news wasn't good. Vorthon survivors from the Proxima battle had made it back to their home worlds, and they were telling everyone who would listen that they had only fought one human ship, not a fleet. Captain, Lisa said quietly, some of the alien governments are starting to ask harder questions. They want to send inspection teams to verify our fleet numbers. Steve sat down in his command chair. What did Admiral Morrison tell them? That all Earth military facilities are classified for security reasons. But sir, they're not buying it anymore. The Altarians are offering to trade their newest battlecruiser designs for just a look at one of our other supercarriers. Vime rubbed his forehead. The bluff was starting to crack. How long do you think we have before someone figures out the truth? Maybe 6 months if we're lucky. Less if the Vorthons keep talking. On Earth, Dr. Ben Carter worked day and night in his underground laboratory, trying to speed up construction of a second supercarrier. But the ship required materials from dozens of different worlds, and some of the technology was so complex that only a few people in the galaxy knew how to build it. Dr. Carter, said his assistant Dr. Mary Johnson, the fabrication of the quantum reactor core is behind schedule by 18 months. We can't make the exotic matter fast enough. What if we simplified the design? Carter suggested. Maybe we don't need a ship as big as the Leviathan. Even a smaller supercarrier would take 5 years to build with our current resources. Carter looked at the construction schedule on his computer screen. Earth's bluff was living on borrowed time, and time was running out. Back on Nova Station, Ambassador Kate Williams finished her first day at the Galactic Council. She had signed 3 new trade agreements, established diplomatic relations with 4 new species, and gained access to technology that would have been impossible to get just months before. But as she walked back to her quarters, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that they were all living a lie. Earth's reputation was built on one ship and one battle. If the truth ever came out, humanity would go from galactic superpower back to insignificant backwater world overnight. The question was whether they could build a real fleet before their secret was discovered. The fate of humanity depended on keeping the galaxy guessing just a little bit longer. Admiral Jack Morrison stared at the massive fleet gathering outside the solar system. His hands were shaking as he counted the ships on his screen. 3,000 vessels from 7 different alien species, all working together for one purpose: to destroy Earth and prove that humanity had been lying about their fleet. "Sir, we're getting reports from our scouts," said Lieutenant Danny Fox, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Vorthans convinced the Altarians, the Centauri, and 4 other governments to join them. They want to end the human threat once and for all." Jack closed his eyes. This was the moment he had feared for months. Earth's bluff had finally been called, and they had only one card left to play. "Get me Captain Rogers," Jack ordered. On the USS Leviathan, Captain Steve Rogers received the call he had been dreading. Through the screen, he could see the exhaustion on Admiral Morrison's face. "Steve, they know," Jack said simply. "Vorthan spies figured out that we only have one supercarrier. The alien alliance is coming to finish us." Steve looked around his bridge. His crew had become legends in the past 6 months, but they were still just 40,000 people on one ship. "How many ships are we facing?" 3,000, maybe more. The bridge went silent. Commander Lisa Hayes, Chief Engineer Ben Carter, and Flight Commander Amy Collins all stared at the numbers on their screens. Even the mighty USS Leviathan couldn't fight 3,000 ships at once. "Admiral," Steve said slowly, "what are our orders?" "Defend Earth. That's all we can do." After the call ended, Steve gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The holographic display showed the approaching alien fleet like a giant cloud of death heading toward their home. "All right, people, let's be honest about this," Steve said. "We can't win a normal battle against 3,000 ships. Our fighters are good, but they're not magic. So we need to think of something else." Ben Carter pulled up the ship's technical specifications. "Captain, I've been working on something. It's dangerous, maybe impossible, but it might be our only chance." "Tell me." "The ship's main weapon. We've never fired it at full power because the energy requirements are enormous, but if we channel power from the quantum reactors directly into the primary cannon, we might be able to create a space-time distortion." Amy looked confused. "What does that mean in normal words?" "It means we might be able to tear a hole in space itself," Ben explained. "Like a temporary black hole that could pull enemy ships into it." Steve felt his heart racing. "What are the risks?" "The ship might explode, the reactors might overload, the weapon might not work at all, or it might work too well and create a permanent black hole that destroys the solar system." "Those are pretty big risks," Lisa said. "The alternative is watching Earth get bombed into dust," Steve replied. "How long do you need to prepare them?" "Weapon? 6 hours to reroute all power systems, but Captain, once we fire this thing, the ship will be defenseless for at least 30 minutes while the reactors cool down." Steve stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the distant glow of Earth. Billions of people living their lives unaware that their existence depended on one desperate gamble. "Do it," he said. For the next 6 hours, the USS Leviathan became a hive of activity. Engineers rerouted power cables the size of train cars. Technicians calibrated weapons that had never been tested. Pilots prepared their fighters for what might be the last battle in human history. Lieutenant Tom Bradley sat in his fighter, waiting for the launch order. Around him, 700 other pilots were doing the same thing. They had more fighters now than 6 months ago, but it still wasn't enough. "All pilots, this is Flight Commander Collins," came Amy's voice over the radio. "I won't lie to you. Today we're facing impossible odds, but we're fighting for our families, our friends, and our future. Make every shot count." The alien fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system like a storm of metal and fire. General Vex Morden commanded from his flagship, eager for revenge, against the humans who had embarrassed his people. "Today we end the human deception," Morden announced to his fleet. "They have one ship pretending to be 13. We will show the galaxy what happens to species that lie to their betters." The USS Leviathan moved to intercept the alien fleet between Mars and Jupiter. To the aliens, it looked like one ship trying to stop an army. They couldn't understand why the humans weren't running away. "Sir, the human ship is powering up some kind of massive weapon," reported Morden's science officer. "Energy readings are off the scale." Impossible. No single weapon could threaten this many ships. But as the aliens watched, space around the USS Leviathan began to shimmer and bend. The ship's main cannon was drawing power from reactors that could fuel a small star. Reality itself was starting to crack under the strain. "All fighters, launch now," Steve ordered. "Keep the enemy busy while we charge the main weapon." 700 human fighters erupted from the Leviathan's bays and swarmed toward the alien fleet. They moved in the chaotic patterns that had made them famous, impossible to predict or target effectively. Tom Bradley found himself flying through a storm of laser fire, his fighter's AI helping him dodge attacks that should have killed him. Around him, other human pilots were doing the impossible, dancing between enemy ships and striking at weak points with surgical precision. But even as the fighters fought bravely, everyone knew they were just buying time. The real battle would be decided by the weapon that Ben Carter was preparing. "Captain, main cannon is at 90% charge," Ben reported, sweat running down his face. "But sir, the power drain is enormous. We're pulling energy from life, support, gravity generators, everything." "How much longer?" Steve asked. 2 minutes. On his screen, Steve could see human fighters being shot down one by one. They were fighting well, but the odds were too great. Earth needed a miracle. "Main cannon at full charge," Ben announced. "Captain, if this doesn't work..." "It will work," Steve said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Fire." The USS Leviathan's main weapon discharged with a sound like reality breaking. A beam of pure energy tore through space toward the center of the alien fleet. When it hit, something incredible happened. Space folded in on itself. A black sphere appeared in the middle of the alien formation, pulling ships toward it like leaves in a whirlwind. Hundreds of enemy vessels were dragged into the distortion and simply vanished. The remaining alien ships scattered in panic. They had never seen anything like it. In 30 seconds, the USS Leviathan had destroyed nearly a quarter of their fleet with a single shot. "Impossible," General Morden whispered as he watched his ships disappear. "What kind of weapon can tear holes? In space?" The answer came from Captain Rogers, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is the USS Leviathan. You attacked our home. You threatened our people. Now you know what happens when you underestimate humanity." The surviving alien ships retreated, in terror. Word spread across the galaxy about the human weapon that could manipulate space and time itself. No one wanted to risk facing technology that powerful. In the aftermath, as the USS Leviathan limped back to Earth with its burnt-out reactors and exhausted crew, Steve Rogers smiled for the first time in months. They had won, but more importantly, they had bought Earth the time it needed. "Captain," Lisa reported, "we're getting messages from governments across the galaxy. Everyone wants to negotiate peace treaties." 6 months later, Admiral Amy Collins stood on the bridge of the USS Guardian, the second supercarrier to be completed. Around Earth, construction yards were building 12 more ships just like it. The bluff had become reality. Dr. Carter's new quantum manufacturing techniques meant they could build supercarriers in 2 years instead of 10. Earth's fleet was growing, and humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. Tom Bradley, now promoted to squadron leader, watched the new ships taking shape through his cockpit window. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that could turn desperation into victory through courage, creativity, and the willingness to risk everything for freedom. The hidden supercarrier had saved humanity when they needed it most. Now it would make sure they never needed saving again. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, staring at the massive alien ship that had just appeared near Luna Station. The vessel was 3 times the size of anything humans had ever built, with smooth silver curves that seemed to bend light around them. His crew worked quietly at their stations, trying to hide their nervousness. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see her, hands shaking slightly. "Put it through," Jake replied. The main screen flickered, and suddenly an alien face appeared. The creature had pale blue skin, large black eyes, and a mouth that was too wide for its face. When it spoke, the words came through perfectly clear English, though the voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. Greetings, primitive species of the third planet. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zenthari people. We represent the Galactic Council, the governing body of this galaxy's civilized worlds. Jake felt his jaw tighten at the word primitive, but he kept his voice calm.
This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth's Exploration Fleet. We welcome contact with your council. Veltar's wide mouth moved in what might have been a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. How quaint. Your species has finally developed
basic space travel. We have been watching your progress for some time. Down on Luna Station, Dr. Lisa Grant hurried through the corridors toward the main conference room. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been called in the moment the alien ship appeared. She had dreamed of this day her entire career, but now that it was happening, she felt completely unprepared. The conference room was already full when she arrived. Admiral Paul Scott sat at the head of the table, his weathered face showing no emotion. Beside him was Roger Hayes, Earth's top diplomat, shuffling through papers with shaking hands. Dr. Rick Barnes, the head of Earth's technology division, was frantically typing on his tablet. The aliens want to meet in person, Admiral Scott was saying. They're sending a delegation to Luna Station tomorrow. Dr. Grant took her seat. What do we know about them? Not much, Dr. Barnes replied without looking up from his tablet. Their ship uses technology we can't even begin to understand. Energy readings are off the charts, but we can't figure out how they're generating that much power. Roger Hayes cleared his throat. According to their initial message, they represent something called the Galactic Council. It seems to be a government that spans multiple star systems and hundreds of different species. And they want us to join? Dr. Grant asked. Not exactly, Admiral Scott said grimly. They want us to apply for membership. Apparently there's a long process involved. The next day, the alien delegation arrived at Luna Station. Dr. Grant watched through the observation window as 3 different types of aliens walked through the airlock. Ambassador Veltar led the group, his tall, thin frame moving with an odd grace. Behind him came a creature that looked like a giant insect, with 4 arms and a chitinous shell that gleamed under the station lights. The third alien was the strangest of all. It appeared to be made of living crystal, its body shifting colors as it moved. The meeting began in the station's largest conference room. Ambassador Veltar introduced his companions as Kithara of the insectoid species and Vorthak of the crystalline people. All 3 beings looked at the humans with what could only be described as barely concealed amusement. Your species wishes to join the Galactic Council, Veltar began. This is a process that typically takes many decades if successful at all. Roger Hayes leaned forward. We're willing to do whatever is necessary. The insect-like Kithara made a sound that might have been laughter. Willing, perhaps. Capable is another matter entirely. Her voice was sharp and clicking, like branches, breaking. Vorthak spoke next, his voice like musical tones. In the past 1,000 years, 734 species have applied for council membership. Only 12 were accepted. Dr. Grant felt her heart sink, but Admiral Scott's expression didn't change. What does the process involve? The Admiral asked. 3 primary evaluations, Veltar explained. First, technological assessment. Your species must demonstrate sufficient advancement to contribute to galactic civilization. Second, cultural evaluation. We must determine if your society is stable and mature enough for interstellar responsibility. Third, military capability. Council members must be able to defend themselves and contribute to galactic security. Dr. Barnes spoke up. How long do we have to prepare? The evaluations begin immediately, Kithara said with what sounded like satisfaction. Most species fail within the first few months. Ambassador Veltar activated a device that projected holographic images into the air above the table. These are the technological standards you must meet, As you can see, your current capabilities fall far short of requirements. The images showed spacecraft that dwarfed Earth's largest vessels, weapons that could destroy entire moons, and cities that floated in space without any visible means of support. Furthermore, Vorthak added, his crystalline body pulsing with different colors, your species shows concerning signs of instability, multiple governments, frequent conflicts, resource depletion. These are not characteristics of a mature civilization. Roger Hayes felt sweat beading on his forehead. Surely our diversity could be seen as a strength, different perspectives, varied approaches to problem solving. The three aliens exchanged what appeared to be meaningful looks. Veltar's too wide mouth stretched into that unsettling smile again. Diversity is chaos, he said simply. Successful galactic civilizations are unified, predictable, and stable. Your planet shows none of these qualities. The meeting continued for several more hours, with the aliens explaining the detailed requirements for each evaluation. By the end, most of the human delegation looked defeated. The technological gap seemed impossible to bridge. The cultural requirements appeared to demand the complete restructuring of human society, and the military standards called for capabilities that Earth couldn't develop in 100 years. As the aliens prepared to leave, Ambassador Veltar turned back to the humans one final time. We will establish a monitoring station on your moon to observe your progress. Do not mistake our presence for encouragement. We expect your species to fail these evaluations, as most do. When that happens, Earth will be classified as a protected, primitive world, and contact with galactic civilization will be prohibited for at least another 1,000 years. After the aliens left, the human delegation sat in stunned silence. Dr. Grant was the first to speak. They don't think we can do it. No, Admiral Scott replied, his voice thoughtful. They don't think we can do it their way. Commander Amy Foster, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, looked up from her notes. Sir, what do you mean? Admiral, Scott stood up, his eyes showing a glint that Dr. Grant had never seen before. I mean, maybe it's time to show them that humans don't always follow the expected path. 3 weeks after the aliens established their monitoring station on the moon, engineer Lisa Wong was working late in her laboratory on Mars colony. She had been given pieces of alien technology to study, small devices that the Galactic Council considered basic tools. The aliens expected humans to spend months just figuring out how they worked. Lisa had figured that out in 2 days. Now she was doing something the aliens probably never expected. She was improving them. Hey Rick, come look at this, she called to Dr. Rick Barnes, who was working at another station across the room. Dr. Barnes walked over, rubbing his tired eyes. What did you find? Lisa held up a small alien device that glowed with soft blue light. This is supposed to be their standard power cell. According to their specs, it should run for about 50 years before needing replacement. That's pretty impressive, Rick said. Sure, but look at this. Lisa showed him a human-made battery she had modified. I took one of our fusion cells and changed the design based on what I learned from their device. This one should run for 200 years and it's half the size. Rick stared at the device in Lisa's hand. That's impossible. Their technology is thousands of years more advanced than ours. That's what I thought too, Lisa said with a grin. But their technology isn't really advanced. It's just old. Really, really old. They've been using the same designs for so long that they never bothered to improve them. Meanwhile, halfway across the solar system, Captain Steve Miller was having his own revelations. He was leading a team of military strategists in reviewing the Galactic Council's combat simulations. These were tests that every species had to pass to prove they could defend themselves and contribute to galactic security. The simulations showed massive space battles with thousands of ships arranged in perfect formations, firing energy weapons at each other across vast distances. It looked impressive, but to Steve's experienced eye, it looked like something from an old history book. This is how they fought wars 1,000 years ago, he told his team. Look at these formations. They're so rigid, so predictable. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Lewis, who had spent years studying asymmetric warfare, nodded in agreement. It's like they never learned anything from smaller conflicts. Everything is about big ships and bigger guns. Steve pulled up Earth's own military, history on his computer. Look at how we fought in the 21st century. Guerrilla tactics, electronic warfare, psychological operations. We learned that the bigger army doesn't always win. You think we should show them our real tactics? Asked Major Kate Johnson, who specialized in unconventional warfare. Steve smiled. I think we should show them how humans really fight. Back on Earth, Dr. Kate Johnson was working with a different kind of problem. The cultural anthropologist had been studying the Galactic Council's social requirements, and what she found disturbed her. Every single member species of the Council had the same basic social structure. Rigid hierarchies with clear chains of command. No democracy, no dissent, no individual creativity. Everyone knew their place and stayed in it. It's like they're all copies of each other, she explained to Dr. Alex Turner, Earth's leading psychologist. They were sitting in Kate's office at the University of Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing the social structures of dozens of alien civilizations. Look at this, Kate continued, pointing to a chart. The Xanthari have had the same government structure for 3,000 years. No changes, no evolution, no growth. The Cathara are even worse. Their society hasn't changed in 5,000 years. Alex studied the displays with growing concern. What about technological advancement? Surely they must innovate something. That's just it, Kate said. They don't. Once they reach a certain level, they stop. They find a way that works and then never change it again. But that's not how progress works, Alex protested. Stagnation leads to decay. Any society that stops growing eventually dies. Kate nodded grimly. Exactly. And they want us to become just like them. The breakthrough came when Dr. Matt Collins made a discovery that changed everything. The physicist was analyzing the aliens' weapons technology when he noticed something odd about their energy signatures. They're using nuclear fusion, he told Admiral Paul Scott over a secure video call. But it's the most inefficient fusion I've ever seen. Admiral Scott leaned forward on his screen. Inefficient how? They're only getting about 30%. Energy conversion, Matt explained. Our latest fusion reactors are hitting 90% efficiency, and their weapon systems are even worse. Matt pulled up a holographic model of an alien weapon. This is supposed to be their most advanced military technology. It's basically a really big laser that takes enormous amounts of power to fire. But look at this. He showed the Admiral a human weapons design. One of our railguns could punch through their shields using a fraction of the power, and our missile systems could overwhelm their defenses completely. Admiral Scott was quiet for a long moment. Are you telling me that their advanced military technology is actually inferior to ours? In many ways, yes, Matt confirmed. They focused so much on making things bigger and more powerful that they forgot to make them better. The pattern was becoming clear across all of Earth's research teams. The aliens weren't as advanced as they claimed to be. They were just old. They had found ways of doing things that worked, and then stopped trying to improve them. Senator Helen Wade was discovering this same pattern in the political realm. As Earth's representative to the Galactic Council's preliminary hearings, she had access to thousands of years of council records. They haven't had a new idea in millennia, she reported to the emergency session of Earth's government leaders. Every problem is solved the same way it was solved before. Every challenge is met with the same response their ancestors used. President Elizabeth Davis looked around the table at Earth's leadership. So what you're all telling me is that this great galactic civilization is actually stuck in the past. That's exactly what we're telling you, confirmed Dr. Frank Moore, who had been analyzing alien communication patterns. And what's more, I think some of them know it. Frank activated a holographic display showing intercepted alien communications. I've been monitoring their private channels. There are members of their younger generation who are frustrated with the way things are done. They want change, but the older generations won't allow it. Dr. Emma Clark, Earth's top linguist, had been working with Frank on the communications project. We're seeing signs of dissent in at least 12 different species. Young aliens who admire human creativity and want to learn from us. But they're afraid to speak up, Frank continued. Their societies don't allow for dissent or new ideas. Anyone who suggests change is labeled as dangerous or unstable. Admiral Scott stood up from his chair. So we have a choice. We can try to become like them and join their stagnant civilization, or we can show them a better way. President Davis looked around the table at her advisors. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I'm suggesting that we don't just try to pass their tests, Scott replied. I'm suggesting that we show them why their tests are wrong. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been following the research from his ship, joined the conversation via video link. The question is, are we ready to take that risk? If we challenge their system and fail, they might decide we're too dangerous to leave alone. Dr. Lisa Grant, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. Maybe that's a risk we have to take. From what we've learned, their civilization is dying. It's just dying so slowly that they don't realize it yet. And if we join them as they are, added Dr. Kate Johnson, we'll die with them. President Davis made her decision. Then we don't play by their rules. We show them what humanity can really do. The meeting ended with Earth's leadership united in a plan that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. Instead of trying to meet the aliens' expectations, they would exceed them in ways the Galactic Council had never imagined. The real test was about to begin. The first official test began on a Tuesday morning. Ambassador Veltar and his team arrived at Luna Station expecting to witness another species fail their technological evaluation. What they saw instead made them very uncomfortable. Commander, Sarah Lee stood in the simulation chamber, facing a holographic display of what the aliens called an impossible scenario. The test showed a single human ship surrounded by 50 enemy vessels. According to Galactic Council records, no species had ever survived this simulation. Begin when ready, announced Cathara, her insect-like voice clicking with what sounded like amusement. Sarah studied the display for exactly 30 seconds. Then she did something that made all three alien observers lean forward in surprise. Instead of trying to fight the 50 ships head-on, she aimed her weapons at a nearby asteroid. Explosion sent chunks of rock flying in all directions. In the chaos that followed, Sarah's ship disappeared from the enemy sensors. While the alien ships tried to regroup and find her, she picked them off one by one using hit-and-run tactics. 20 minutes later, all 50 enemy ships were destroyed, and Sarah's ship was barely damaged. Veltar stared at the display in silence. In 3,000 years of testing, no one had ever thought to use the environment as a weapon. How did you know to do that? Vorthak asked, his crystalline body flickering with confused colors. Sarah shrugged. It seemed obvious. Why fight fair when you don't have to? The aliens exchanged worried glances. This was not how the test was supposed to go. Meanwhile, Dr. Matt Collins was demonstrating human military technology to another group of alien observers. He stood next to a small device that looked nothing like the massive weapon systems the aliens were used to seeing. This is our standard infantry weapon, Matt explained to the alien military experts who had come to evaluate Earth's capabilities. The aliens looked unimpressed. The device was tiny compared to their energy cannons. Demonstrate its power, ordered General Zexkar of the Vorthak military. Matt activated the weapon and fired at a target 100 meters away. The projectile moved so fast that the aliens' enhanced vision could barely track it. The target exploded into fragments. Interesting, Zexkar admitted, but surely it cannot penetrate our military shields. Matt smiled. Actually, it can. He fired again, this time at a holographic shield generator that the aliens had set up. The projectile passed right through the energy barrier, as if it wasn't there, and destroyed the generator. The alien military experts began talking rapidly among themselves in their own languages. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical projectiles moving at incredible speeds. How many of these weapons does your species possess? Asked General Zexkar nervously. Every human soldier carries one, Matt replied. We have about 50 million of them. The aliens went very quiet. Back on Earth, Senator Helen Wade was making her own disturbing discoveries. She had been given access to the Galactic Council's historical records as part of the cultural evaluation process. What she found made her call an emergency meeting with President Davis. They're not evaluating us, Helen told the president over a secure video call. They're trying to decide if we're a threat. President Davis looked up from the report she was reading. What do you mean? I've been going through their records of past applications, Helen explained. Every species that showed too much innovation or creativity was rejected. They don't want new members who might change things. They want members who will follow the established order. Helen activated a holographic display showing the Council's decision-making process. Look at this. The Kalari species was rejected because they had too many different governments. The Nexus were rejected because they kept improving their technology too quickly. The Vailnari were rejected because they asked too many questions about Council policies, so they only accept species that are already stagnant, President Davis said grimly. Exactly. And if a species is rejected, they're quarantined, cut off from the galaxy forever. The president was quiet for a long moment. How many species have they quarantined? Helen's face was pale when she answered. Over 600. Some of them were more advanced than current council members, but they were deemed unsuitable for galactic civilization. This news reached Dr. Frank Moore just as he was making his own breakthrough in alien communications. The linguist had been monitoring private channels between council species, and what he was hearing confirmed their worst fears. They're debating what to do with us, Frank told Dr. Emma Clark as they listened to intercepted transmissions. Some want to quarantine Earth immediately, before we become too dangerous. Emma translated the alien conversation they were monitoring. This one is saying that humans are unpredictable and chaotic. This other one is arguing that we might contaminate other species with our instability. Frank nodded grimly. But listen to this part. He played another recording, this one from a younger alien voice. Emma translated. The humans solve problems we have struggled with for centuries. Maybe we should learn from them instead of fearing them. That's Kyleth, Emma said with surprise. Ambassador Veltar's own nephew. He's been secretly studying our methods. The conversation was interrupted when Colonel Ben Lewis burst into their laboratory. We have a problem, he announced. I've been monitoring alien military communications. They're positioning warships around our solar system. Frank and Emma looked at each other with growing alarm. How many ships? Frank asked. 50 so far, but more are coming, Ben replied. It looks like they're preparing for either a quarantine blockade or something worse. The news reached Admiral Paul Scott within minutes. He immediately called Captain Jake Morrison, who was still commanding the UES Horizon near the outer edge of the solar system. Jake, what's your tactical assessment? Admiral Scott asked over the comm. Captain Morrison studied the alien ships on his sensors. They're arranged in a classic blockade formation, but it's designed to contain rather than attack. For now. Can we break through if we need to? Jake was quiet for a moment, running calculations. With conventional tactics? No, but we don't use conventional tactics. Admiral Scott understood. How long do we have? Maybe days, maybe hours. It depends on what the Council decides about us. The crisis came to a head when Dr. Tony Kim made a discovery that changed everything. The scientist had been analyzing the alien monitoring station on Earth's moon when he noticed something strange about their data collection methods. They're not just watching us, he told Admiral Scott during an emergency briefing. They're scanning our entire planet. Every military installation, every research facility, every population center. Admiral Scott felt his blood run cold. That sounds like preparation for an invasion. Or complete sterilization, Tony replied grimly. If they decide we're too dangerous, they might not settle for just quarantine. The news reached President Davis just as she was preparing for what might be humanity's final meeting with the Galactic Council. The aliens had requested one last evaluation